have a very nice block, and I I have people talking loud outside, which never happens. It's almost like you want to shout out there, "Hey, I'm on a WebEx, please."
Them's the breaks.
Well, actually, I think my wife opened up the front door because she heard the voices too. Forget about me. Watch out for her.
Did you hear back from Nathan?
I did. He said he's
There he
trying to
is.
sign on. There he
He just
is.
got in. He just got in.
All right. Yep. Here's Nathan. Now you can put a face to name, or name to the face, however you want to put it.
All right. Well, I think we can get started. So,
Sure.
yeah. So, good evening, everyone who's here. My name's Dan Dominguez. I'm the planning director for the city of New Brunswick. Over the last almost a year now, the city has been working with CME to produce the city's newest, latest, and greatest master plan. Uh, and the folks from CME are here tonight to do a quick presentation and run through some of the highlights of the work that they've done on behalf of the city. And so I'm just with that, out of the way, I kick it over to Ron, who's been
Thank
running
you.
point on the project for us.
Sure. My name's Ron Reinertson. I work for CME. And I've had a great team under me, working, not under me, they've been side by side working with me. And I have one of them here tonight, Nathan Foote, who's been the author of a great contributor to many of the sections of the master plan. I've been sharing this with different team members. Chris Dockney, who will probably be on the next presentation. He also was on the first one, but that was more like a Q&A, just a listening session. We had Pat Van. Um, uh, how do I pronounce his name? I always screw it up there, Nathan. Pat Van Burnham, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, so don't tell him I screwed up his name, so we're good.
No,
Pat
it's
Van
just
Burnham
between
was
us.
with me last week, and he did a great job. And Nathan Foote is here tonight. Other than me, who was not a Rutgers graduate, Nathan, Chris, and Pat are all graduates of Rutgers. They know they know New Brunswick, and they have been such a great asset. And with that, we've got a little deck of slides, and I'll just start it off. Nathan and I are going to switch back and forth. Basically, probably a lot of the parts that Nathan authored, I really would, I've felt that my team members need to be upfront and contribute to these presentations. They did a lot of the hard work. I want to share it with them. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Screen one. That's not it. There is. It's not a second. It's my. Bear with me a second. I'm going to cancel a share. I need to see where my. I need to see where my presentation is. That would help. Okay, so I think we're ready to go. Technical difficulties. Now let's share the screen. There we go. I see the logo. Okay, here we go. Can everyone see it? I think we can. So basically, this is the master plan 2022 for the city of New Brunswick. Just to introduce, I'm going to say that purpose of the master plan is it provides the following. It's a blueprint for future growth and development. It has a Vision with goals, and I wish I can hide the screen. So I can't see there we go. Now I can see my deck. Vision with goals and recommendations guide land use planning to protect public health, protect public safety, promote the general welfare, and it reaffirms the legal basis for zoning decisions. The elements of the master plan. Technically, there are 2 required elements, but in reality, there are 3. First, you have a statement of objectives, principles, assumptions, policies, and standards, and a land use plan. And there is 15 optional elements. This master plan includes 7: housing plan, circulation plan, utility service plan, the community service facilities plan, educational facilities plan, open space and recreation plan, and recycling plan. And there's additional components, relationships to other plans, and a strategic implementation plan. Now, I mentioned 2. In reality, there's 3. If you wish to zone, if you wish to have the power to zone under the municipal land use plan, municipal land use law, you need to have a housing plan element. So even though it's listed as optional, it's de facto mandatory. So first off, we've got the land use plan element, and I am going to turn it over to Nathan. And Nathan, I'll just start, let you have at it.
Yeah, and I guess what we'll do is I'll just let you know when to advance through the slides so that we don't have to go back and forth changing screen shares. So the way that we're going to work this is for each of the elements, we're pretty much going to show the purpose, the components included, some visuals, just a map or 2 for each of the elements, and then issues identified, and then recommendations. And then in the case of the land use element, we're just going to show highlights from those recommendations. Otherwise, it's going to be too long. So we're just highlighting certain elements, certain key recommendations that we've identified for the city going forward. So first of all, the purpose of the land use element, like with most of these elements, in fact, all of them, and with the overall master plan, what we're looking at is a long-range policy guide for the city, in this case, for land use development. And so, as Ron had mentioned, this is also the foundation to support the zoning ordinance. This is where the explanations and the rationale for the zoning ordinance itself, for changes to the ordinance, and for land use decisions in the city really stem from. This is, everything in the zoning ordinance is supposed to relate back to the master plan. So the land use element becomes critical. That's why it's one of the 2 required elements from the MLUL, from the municipal land use law. And then something new that has occurred in the last 2 years is to provide a climate change vulnerability assessment. This is new to the master planning process as of 2021, as of last year. So I believe right before New Brunswick began this process, that's when that requirement, that climate change vulnerability assessment came to be a factor. So that was included in the land use element. I'm going to talk a little bit about it. Pat Van Burnham, our colleague on writing this master plan, he was key. He was the critical player in writing that. So he's kind of he was the one I wanted to give credit where that was due for the land use element. And so Ron, if you want to scroll to the next slide.
There you go.
All right, so the components that are included. So this is pretty much the section headers for the land use element that we used. So there's a relationship of the land use element to other elements. Something I should also mention is that these largely correspond to the requirements of the MLUL. These are coming almost directly from the MLUL, the requirements for the land use element that are included here. So there's a relationship of the land use element to other elements, the relationship of the land use element to the natural conditions, and then the way that we fit in the climate change vulnerability assessment is going along with those natural conditions. Because really, when you think about it, the climate change vulnerability is future natural conditions that we're going to be looking at for the city of New Brunswick. So that's how we tied that into to that.
And if I could just mention that,
Sure.
It's funny because the climate change vulnerability assessment, the city's going to be one of the first to have it. So we debated internally where to put it. I think we came up with a good solution to really put it up front. because it really matters. Um, I don't have to remind anyone about Ida last year. Kind of just was a reality check about how vulnerable we are. So I think it's a key element on what we've been doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that add-on, Ron. So yeah, so the climate change vulnerability assessment followed by analysis of existing land uses and relationships to current zoning. That's sort of the meat. That's sort of the meat of the land use element, is that particular piece of it, the analysis of existing land uses and how that relates to current zoning, because that also gives us an indication, or gave us an indication of these are the things that should be changed, or these are the things that could be considered to be changed in the zoning ordinance going forward. Following that are the current land use issues, then the land use goals that stem from those issues and from the larger context of the city, and then recommendations based on everything that preceded it. So with that, Ron, next slide.
Let's do it.
I believe this is the first visual.
Yeah.
The first visual that we have. So this is just this is an example of the mapping that we did. This is the existing land use and the zone districts for the city of New Brunswick. This will be a part of the land use element. This is incorporated into the text itself. And so that's going to be a part of the element. So that'll be something. The way that it's divided up, though, is by kind of district type. And so rather than just having all of them on the map, we divided them into kind of district types. So there's an industrial area that then is divided between the I2, I1, and I2E. Then there's the residential single family districts, the R1 through R4. Then the single and two family R5A, the R5s, and so on. So it's kind of grouped in that way to give kind of a sense of what different areas of the city are not just zoned as, but what they are intended to be from a land use perspective.
And just before I turn to the next slide, all I was going to say is that all of these maps, all of the GIS items that we've created are going to be given to the city to use going forward. I think it's going to be a valuable tool to the city. Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, obviously all of these maps are going to be handed over to the city. All of the information that we've gathered, all of that is going to be provided to the city, because it's really, all of this is about the city. All of this is about helping the city in its planning process and in dealing with these issues. That's actually a good segue into the issues that we identified for land use purposes. First of all, the key part of this from land use is a growing population. So the population for the city is projected to grow something on the order, I want to say 15% between 2020 and 2050. So by 2050, I believe the figure is about 69,000. Right now, it's about, if current U.S. Census figures are accurate, I think is about 55,000, although the estimate had been 59,000 previously. I think that's about where the figure was when I looked at it. But in any case, the population is expected to grow over the next few decades. And so because of that, that's a major issue that the city will have to grapple with, because you're going to have places for people to live, as well as places for people to go to, places for people to work, and places for people to shop and go about getting their daily needs fulfilled. So that's why that's kind of the front and center. That's the first one that we identified. Then there's also increasing industrial and commercial development. This is about driving the economy of the city. The city is really a regional key to the region. And so because of that, not just for the city, but for the region, you want to be an economic driver. So increasing industrial and commercial development. Short-term rentals, things like Airbnb, Vrbo, these are things that can take housing units out of the housing market, but they can also provide the property owners a stream of revenue. So those are just two competing interests that you know, you can't just say they're bad. You can't just say they're good. There are competing interests with short-term rentals that the city is going to have to balance over the short term, but also the long term as well. So that's an issue that we identified. The growing healthcare and educational uses. So hospital, healthcare, as well as educational from Rutgers. These are all things that those are growing sectors of the regional, state, and national economies. And so these are things that are going to have to be balanced against other land uses. Mitigating climate change effects, again, climate change vulnerability assessment, but also what can the city do at the ground level, at the local level to help combat or at least mitigate those effects. There's existence of barriers to improving properties. Just as an example, bulk regulations for smaller properties that kind of create that barrier. We want to try to those barriers to generate a good housing stock. Those are things that will need to be addressed, or the city will consider addressing. And then with climate change risk specifically, for the city, we have things like flooding and higher floodplains, with the Raritan River being right there as one of the borders, but also Mile Run Brook also being there, and then severe weather events, hurricanes, tropical storms. Again, as Ron had mentioned earlier, Tropical Storm Ida moving through and the flooding that caused last September. At the forefront of everybody's minds, I'm sure. So those are the issues that we identified, and then just the highlights of the recommendations. Rezonings for specific properties, those are going to be identified in the land use element, the text. Update permitted or conditional uses for some specific zones. You see them listed there. I'm not going to list them all verbally. Those are listed right there. Bulk regulation revisions to certain districts, R5A, R6, and C4. And like I mentioned, the short-term rentals are an issue that we've identified. So consider short-term rental regulation ordinance to be specified, right? One of the part of that recommendation is identifying the best practices from other cities, from other places in New Jersey, because this isn't just something that we've come up with out of the blue. This is something that other municipalities in the state are doing as well. They are also starting to turn to short-term rental regulations of some form or another. One example, just to provide one, is Jersey City has adopted such an ordinance. So trying to find the best practices from the state and even nationwide for regulating short-term rentals, and then utilizing what's going to work best for the city of New Brunswick. And then lastly, again, this isn't the exhaustive list. This is just the highlights. The state last year adopted a model ordinance on electric vehicle charging stations. New Brunswick does have that in their ordinance. It does have something related to that, but adopting the state model ordinance, instead of that, in order to be compliant with the state and to provide additional incentives and additional drive to generate those electric vehicle charging stations. And so that's going to do it for land use element. Ron, I believe you said you were going to do.
Great job, Nathan. And I'm just going to close out because I've kind of become a subject matter expert on the electric vehicle charging stations. The way the state legislation is written, that model ordinance is the ordinance for the whole state. Okay, it supersedes everything else. So, but I think the main thing is to adopt it within the ordinance itself. Helps anybody who comes in and looks at the ordinance. It's there. It's not a mystery. It's there, and it's just it really should be adopted. As part of the ordinance itself. So instead of just referencing it after. Anyway, housing plan element. So I'm going to say that Chris Dockney, who is our subject matter expert on this, did a great job. I'm just going to go over some of the slides. The purpose of the housing plan element is to address housing supplies throughout the city, and particular attention is paid to housing for low-income populations and moderate-income populations. Components include housing stock inventory for the city, housing construction trends for the city, current and projected demographics and analysis, potential issues in the city's housing market, and recommendations. So we have one map for the housing plan element, and let me tell you, there are plenty of maps that are going to be with this master plan. So what we're showing you tonight is just a small selection. Issues that have been identified is the need for new housing. Land is limited. It's built out municipality. Rental housing is getting more expensive. You know that. That's a key thing. A missing middle. Housing is disappearing. We have high income. We have high end, low end, but this is missing middle. That it seems to be disappearing. Almost have a donut there in the middle. You know, for middle class housing. And of course, this has been an ongoing challenge for the city back from the 2004 master plan and onward, and also the re-exam is the large student population, how it presents opportunities and challenges in the city for their housing. The recommendations of the housing plan is to encourage new housing developments of all types, encourage redevelopment with infill housing. Very important, again, built out municipality, infill housing can help address shortages. Consider rent control and rent stabilization policies. Consider using publicly owned properties for construction of affordable housing. Now we go on to the circulation plan element. Let's go here. Purpose is to identify critical pieces of transportation infrastructure for cars, buses, trains, bicycles, pedestrians, other relevant forms of transportation. In other words, any way we get around, and to assess the current availability of parking in the city. Don't have to tell anyone that parking in an urban area is always a challenge. And you know, the balance is how much should we encourage and how much should we encourage mass transit. Analyses conducted include mapping and analysis of transportation infrastructure, cars, buses, trains, bicycles, pedestrian, and examination of recent and ongoing projects with circulation impact. Here's one of the maps that we have here, which is the street classification map. Arterials, local streets, that type of thing will be identified within maps such as this. Okay, highlights of recommendations. Confirm the city's current designation of the existing circulation network. Small improvements at specific sites, and amend parking regulations in the city zoning ordinance. Next is the utility service plan element. The purpose is to analyze the needs for utilities, water supply, drainage, flood control, sewerage, waste treatment, solid waste disposal, other related utilities, and identify future general locations of utility facilities. And you know, we talked about the climate element earlier, and you can see the interplay with a lot of these elements that you know, climate change is always going to be in the background and analyzing these sort of things. Utilities analyzed, wastewater management and sanitary sewer. We utilized the latest and greatest, the city 2020 sanitary sewer master plan, and also the 2020 water master plan. We also analyzed stormwater, gas and electric, telecommunication, and cable services. Here's one of the maps we had for future development, putting that all into perspective. Recommendations are going to include infrastructure improvements and maintenance, update management systems, and establish an inflow and infiltration plan. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Nathan.
Okay, thanks, Ron. So the next element that was included in this master plan was actually two. These are two elements. There's the community facilities plan element and the educational facilities plan element. So those are combined for the purposes of this master plan. I just wanted to mention that up front because these are listed as two separate entities in the MLUL. Again, the Municipal Land Use Law lists these as two elements, but they are here as one. But they include what's included in the master plan for New Brunswick is going to be both. It is going to be a comprehensive the comprehensive elements for both of them. So what does that include? Again, this is largely from the MLUL itself. So identify existing and proposed community facilities, namely what they are, where they are, and how they are related to the surrounding area. That is to their communities. Again, this is the community facilities element. And so because of that, we are trying to identify how are these related to the surrounding area? Are they doing are they performing the function of a community facility? And then for the educational facilities element, we incorporate the purposes and goals of the what's called the long-range facilities plan. This is something that the New Brunswick public school system has to produce and provide to the state. And so the educational facilities element incorporates the elements of that and identifies the elements of that, the purposes, the goals, and how that relates to the overall future of the city. So let's see.
I can go on to the next, Nathan, if you want.
Yeah, let's go on to the next one.
You got it.
All right. Let's see. Facility types identified. This is just a listing of what we identified in this element. So there's, we have schools, of course, religious institutions, churches, synagogues, mosque, what have you. Those are identified in the community facilities element. We have arts and entertainment facilities, historic sites, libraries, hospitals, fire department services, police department services, and then other city services, admin, engineering, water utility, all of these things that make a city function are those pretty much included in the other city services, but then also everything here, what makes a city function, that's sort of what's identified in the community facilities element. And so with that, we have, I believe, another map.
Well, and I was just, before I go, before we move on to the next slide, I mean, traditionally, New Brunswick has combined these elements. So that's what we did. And it's we consider the uniqueness of the city. They call the hub city, you can call the healthcare city. You got Rutgers, you've got such great institutions of healthcare. And then plus you combine the school system. Chose to, the MLUL, yes, the MLUL does separate these, but we kept the form. We thought it was appropriate for the city, and I'll move on.
All right, thanks, Ron. Okay, so this map is just, again, it's one of these maps that are included in the element, but we're just presenting it here as an example of the product that we have produced for the city with this element. So this is just the other community facilities. So this just gives an overview of, so there are a series of maps that show different elements, the fire department, police department, locations, library, that sort of thing, where they're separated. But this gives a sense of other facilities in the city. And then in the text, it actually goes into what those other facilities are. But this just, again, is just an example of the kind of map that you're going to get in in this element of the master plan.
And giving credit where credit is due, there are many of these maps on the city website that we utilize. They were a great resource. What I think is going to be really great about this master plan is going to be all under one package. But we just can't forget to give the credit that there's been many different processes to identify these community facilities that we were able to rely on and produce this product.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point, Ron. And then finally, recommendations for these elements. Continue to monitor and improve existing community facilities. So New Brunswick has many community facilities. It's part of what makes the city a true city and a true community. And so monitoring and improving those existing facilities. And then another thing that we identified was just bolstering shared services with neighboring municipalities. That would be something to consider and look into going into the next couple of decades. And with that,
Here we go.
into the open space and recreation plan. So this one, we can go to the purpose here. So what we did and what we have to do is show the comprehensive system of areas and public sites for recreation. And as part of that, as a piece of that, identifying properties on what's called the recreation open space inventory. Just a quick background of that. That is a listing and inventory that the city provides to the state that lists out. These are the properties that have been that are within our open space inventory, and it also identifies properties or pieces of properties that are protected in perpetuity, indefinitely, from any kind of extensive development as a result of being what's called Green Acres funded, or having being related to Green Acres funding in some sort. There's some interesting background to that, but I'm not going to go into that. But that's essentially what the ROSI, the ROSI, is. And Ron, if you wanted to jump in and just.
I was going to say, and we're going to provide recommendations for enhancing existing park systems. There have been so many resources when it comes to the parks, this element, internally and also externally. A lot of different resources. The Trust for Public Land and Rutgers have produced great reports that we were able to rely on. Also, the city helped with a lot of these reports, and they've been a great resource. And in essence, when we get to it, when the parks element, you're going to find out the city has a really good park system, and there are recommendations to improve it. But the city should be proud of their park system.
Yeah, and so speaking of which, so there were 27 parks or open space areas. So these aren't just recreational areas; these are also open space conservation areas. They include plazas, for example, Monument Square in along George Street at the George Street Livingston Avenue intersection. That's included the World War I Memorial Park. That's also included. So it's parks and open spaces. So there's 23 city-owned or operated. There are 2 that are currently county-owned, which includes Wolfson and New Brunswick. Now I know that there's, some negotiations, I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There's ongoing open houses that a lot of people on this call may be aware of to develop this property, which is the former Wolfson parking deck. It's currently listed on the county, Rossi. We're just, within the plan itself, we're just going to be recommending that, the record just be kept up to date. I think that particular park is an exciting opportunity for an urban pocket park that can help a lot, can really provide some open space and just a nice peaceful sitting area for people during lunch hour.
Yeah, that's one that Ron had mentioned that I attended Rutgers. That's one that I walked by many times on New Brunswick. So that's included, and then 2 state-owned, which includes up in the northwest corner of the city, the Delaware and Raritan Canal Trail. And then the next slide is going to show the Rossi properties that were identified. So again, one of the maps that is going to be included in the final element. And then recommendations, as Ron mentioned, one of them that we identified was, and you see that as the last one on the list, identify and reconcile discrepancies in the Rossi list. There are just some things that don't match between what the city's declaration states and what the actual state Rossi show. So just identifying, reconciling those discrepancies just to make sure that the city and the state are on the same page regarding what's on that list. And then besides that, existing park improvements and maintenance. So as Ron said, the park system for New Brunswick is good. It's a good system, and so maintaining and improving that system that exists already, it should really be a key focus, and that was a key focus of the 2017 action plan that we identified and used. As Ron had mentioned, there were many resources that we utilized for this. That was one of them, and that was a key drive of that action plan. Was look, the system, you have a good system, make sure that it stays a good system. However, let's also look at expanding the city park system, but it's with a built-up city like New Brunswick, it has to be a targeted approach where you identify specific properties and see what you can do with them. An example of that is already there. You have the Welton Street Park near downtown, the downtown area. That's an example of that, of what we would call might call a targeted approach. And then coordinating with community stakeholders as well to identify the best programming and the best features for these parks. So that's our list of recommendations for the open space and recreation plan. And that leads us to the recycling plan element. Purpose of this, accommodating efficient and effective methods of recycling and trash collection, identifying existing refuse and recycling requirements, and then recommendations for ordinances and policies. How can we, become a better city for recycling through ordinances and policies. And then this next slide is going to be a map showing the, I believe it's the recycling schedule. So just the different zones within the city that exist for the recycling, collection of recycling.
I think there's another map for leaf collection, but I chose this one. Maybe I like the gray and the white. I don't know.
And then finally, recommendations, review recycling ordinance, bolster enforcement and education. That's kind of a key one, making sure that, property owners, residents, but also commercial and industrial uses know what the requirements are and know what can be recycled, when it can be recycled, all of that sort of thing. And then establishing partnerships with community stakeholders for specifically recycling education. That is, for example, partnering with Rutgers, continuing to partner with Rutgers to provide education to the city, to residents, property owners, again, to commercial and industrial uses. So to all of the residents and users of the city, letting them know what can be recycled, when to recycle, all of that, and what the requirements are. All right, and then relationship to other plans. As Ron had mentioned at the beginning, this is one of the components that is included. It's not an element per se, but it's included in order to identify where there might be conflicts in land use and in the master plans between New Brunswick and its surrounding area and with the county and state. So the purpose is to provide a statement indicating relationship of the proposed development to, as I mentioned, master plan and zoning of contiguous municipalities, that is the neighboring municipalities, the county master plan, the state development and redevelopment plan, and then the district solid waste management plan as well. And then again, another map. This just shows New Brunswick within its surrounding municipalities. You have Franklin in Somerset County, and then in Middlesex County, you have Piscataway, Highland Park, Edison, East Brunswick, and North Brunswick. And so those were the master plans and zoning ordinances that we analyzed and tried to identify any conflicts, any discrepancies, not discrepancies, but any conflicts, and whether they were in incompatibility with New Brunswick and with this master plan for New Brunswick. And so, sorry.
This is one of your maps, right, Nathan?
Yes, it is.
Just want to say so.
And then the findings, it, the master plan that we were putting forward is compatible with the surrounding municipalities. It's also consistent with those county, state, and district plans. So fortunately, everything lined up. Everything looked like it was compatible. Where there were some red flag areas, it turns out that there were buffering and other elements that made it so that it wasn't conflicting. Um, so um, that worked out. And then finally, the strategic implementation plan. Essentially, what this did, it's the final section, and essentially it's a synthesis of everything that went before it. This is synthesizing and providing I hesitate to say it, but it's a one-stop shop for the recommendations. It synthesizes the recommendations for each element, for each master plan element, and then provides implementation strategies for those recommendations. And that's the way that the master plan wraps up. So in conclusion, we want to say thank you in as many different languages as we can. Ron, I'll turn it back over to you for any final comments or thoughts.
Well, I'm just gonna go back and stop the sharing so we can go back to the screen. There we go. So we go back in. I hope this was thorough enough, but gave you a great outline of what where we're at. Just if anybody's asking, where are we on the text? The text is basically done, but that doesn't mean it is done in complete sense. We still want to get public input. If there's valuable public input, we'd like to add it there. But basically, we have put the master plan into production. We have one section left that needs to be formatted, but basically our text is done. I hope when everybody sees it in draft form, they'll be very well pleased with it. But if there are items that people wish to comment on, that's why we're here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan.
Thanks, Ron. Guys, really appreciate all the work you guys have put into it, and thanks for coming out tonight and presenting the presentation. It was very thorough, and I thought you guys covered all the bases very well. I would open it up to folks who are here. If they have any questions, this is an open forum of sorts, and we can field them and go from there. Hold on one second, Ron. Hold on.
No problem. Nathan, do you want to take notes on this?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and be the note taker on this.
Okay, thanks.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. My name's Erin McGuire. I'm a New Brunswick resident. I also work for the city. I had a question about the stormwater element. Where will that be included in the master plan?
Well, a stormwater element is usually considered part of the master plan. That's just, I would say that it is sort of a separate element, but it's still the same. We haven't directly worked on the stormwater element. That's the city's responsibility. But in the final product, we'll just iron it out. So we make sure the lineages and linkages there.
Okay.
But there is not to interject, but there is a bit of a assessment of sorts that happens in the utility section, right?
Oh, absolutely. In the utilities
Yeah.
element, the utilities element. And so once you see these elements, they're not like 5-page elements. They're heavy duty elements, 30, 40, 50 pages. And and they're very detailed. And I think that that would probably satisfy you. And that's a great question, Aaron, because, again, it's one of those ambiguities in municipal land use law that the stormwater management is actually considered part of the master plan. We'll just make sure that the references are clear on that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Don't get up all at once, guys. All right. Well, seeing that there are no other comments, Ron, I'll just state again that we'll be having one more session at the planning board next week. At some point in the near future, we hope to potentially get some more of the plan out there. So keep your eyes peeled for that, and look on the city website. And yeah, so I look forward to maybe some of you visiting with us again on at the end of the planning board hearing on Monday, and for us to do this all over again. And
Is it
Ron,
Monday? Is it Monday, Dan, or Tuesday?
yeah, Monday. I did this one on Tuesday to see if anybody who couldn't, because we were having the other meetings on Mondays for our land use boards, if anybody, wasn't free on a Monday, was free on a Tuesday, etc.
I'm just checking my calendar. The only reason I asked, go to city council presentation. Okay, perfect. And I had it on my calendar at 7 p.m.
That's
For
when the
some
meeting
reason I
starts.
thought I had a conflict, and you made my day by saying it's on Monday.
Oh, there it is.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming out and listening to us.
All right. Thanks, folks.
Okay.
Everyone have a great night.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Have a wonderful
Thanks, everybody.
evening. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.